How we doing? This is Fox back again. This is part 2 in our mini-series covering VPS Avenger, or Vengeance Producer Suite Avenger. In part 1 we had a quick look over the controls that you've got, the basic controls that you've got, no matter what wave shape you're using. So yeah, we went over everything you can see in this section here, this little grey box here. So your different sort of bend and rate reducing modes, the wave sync, the FM, noise, fine-tune, transpose level. We touched on the voicing section, or this chorus section, which is very cool, and we also talked about the detune, where you can choose a number of voices, where you place them in the stereo field, and how wide you want it with the detune knob. We also looked at the vibrato, built-in vibrato. Now we're going to have a look at the main amp envelope section, or the way you can add in envelopes, their controls, and also the filter and how you can control that. So by default, obviously key tracking is on the volume, so the harder you hit it, the louder it's going to sound, which obviously makes sense. So you've got an overall volume control as well as a level for the oscillator. You've got a volume control over this amp, because you can send multiple oscillators to our amp. You can see in this section here we are on amp 1. It's hard lined in, so this automatically is mapped to the amp. So control the individual level of the oscillator here, and then you control the volume of the actual amp as well. So you can have different amount of volumes going into this amp. Different oscillators can be at different volumes going into this, and then this is sort of a master volume to whatever is routed to it. Key tracking, spike. This is like adding a little bit of punch to the sound, to it, positive or negative. If you right click, this is the spike curve, so you can have it more severe or more subtle. Very useful for adding a bit of punch to the start of a sound. Again, key tracking to the spike. The harder you hit it, the more of a punch you're going to get. The softer you are, you're not really going to hit it, hear it. You then have individual control for the pan of whatever's going into this amp. Again, it's not something I use. I normally pan the oscillators in here by right clicking on the level knob. We touched on that in part 1. You then have pan key tracking. Let's see what that's doing. Seems like it's making everything wider the harder we hit it. Just giving everything a little bit more. Not too sure about that. I'll have to check. I'll write in the description what that pan key tracking does. Never use. Maybe it's when the spread is involved. That spread, every time I play a new note, it's bouncing it from left to right. Maybe the key tracking has something to do with that also. Yeah, so the spread and the key tracking are linked together. The spread pushes the pan in either side as other notes come in, giving you a sort of ping-pongy sort of feel. The key tracking controls whether that works depending on how hard you press a key. Very straightforward. You then have an attack. It's a 5-stage envelope: an attack, hold, decay, sustain, release. No visual display of the envelope, which is a shame. Something that I would like. I think it's a must nowadays to be able to visualise what's going on. But nonetheless. You do. Sorry about that. I'm sure you all know what an envelope is. I'm not going to waste time explaining what an envelope is. A cool thing about these envelopes, just as in Serum, is you can control the curve or of the slope between linear and exponential. So again, if you just right click, so on this decay, you can see we're changing between very, very linear, exponential, and then I don't know what the one's called where it's positive, ramped up or something like that. You then have a sustain and a release. You can set an external source. to control the envelope. If you've set up a nice plucky envelope inside your filter, you can then set this to control the amp envelope. So or mod envelope 1 or filter 1. As you introduce more filters, I would imagine it comes up in here. Yep, filter 2. So that's very cool. You can use the envelopes if you've set up an envelope for a pluck, as I said, inside the filter. You can use that envelope then to control the amp envelope as well, which makes sense. Something I've not seen in another synth before. So let's just set this wide open. Now we're going to have a look at the filter. The amp envelopes are real straightforward. So how you choose your filter. There are oodles of filters in here. You've got all these different low pass ones, all these high passes, band stops. Some of these special ones are really cool, like a talking filter. If we give it some resonance. There's loads of different filters in here. Band stops are just like your phasing ones. Band pass obviously is a band pass. Resonance is an increase in gain at the cutoff point. You can then drive the filter. Everything is key track enabled as well. The higher you play up the keyboard. Is it key tracking or is it velocity? Velocity, yeah. So the harder you hit it, the more it's going to introduce whatever it is assigned to. So if we apply drive to velocity, let's just choose a basic low pass. And then we have an envelope. So envelope amount this is. Then your envelope is pretty much the same as the filter envelope, so you've got control over the attack, decay. If we then set this to filter 1. Or vice versa, you've got an external source here, so you could use the amp envelope to control the envelope of the filter as well. Very, very easy to set up some modulation without actually diving into the matrix section. So this is your giant cutoff knob, obviously. Some of these low pass ones are really nice. Which one was I using? TB. This is based on the TB303, so this is going to be really squelchy. Very, very cool. These shapers are a form of distortion. These are routable via this sort of box down the side here as well. So if we route this to shaper 1, you can choose a type of distortion. Let's choose a tube. You can see what it's doing. It's adding some tube distortion. There's devil. you have control over a resonant peak. This changes depending on which sort of shaper you choose. You can choose 2 separate peaks, the individual gains of each one. Let's open the filter up. So we've got signfold on there. Let's try a smooth one. You can have negative peaks. It's almost like a 2-band EQ, but with some real serious gain boosting. That is linked to this filter section. So yeah, the frequencies can be linked. Not sure what the split does because they seem to be individually controllable anyway. Maybe it splits the channel, sends each part of the audio signal through each of those sort of peaks. Let's make a quick race. So we're going to have 2 oscillators. Oscillator 1, we'll get away from the reverb and the delay. Oscillator 2, let's just fine tune it. Let's use this shaper again. Let's try some quite severe extreme. We need to route this to shaper 1 plus shaper 1. Try something a little bit 0. A little bit of detune on oscillator 1, nothing too severe, just 2 voices. Same with oscillator 2. Yeah, love it. Absolutely awesome big kit. So that is the amp envelope. Obviously, you can have as many of these as you want. It is literally limitless. You just click it, bring them in. You can route each one of these to different ones. So I could then send oscillator 1 to amp 2. Boost the volume of that. Have some punch just for the syncing oscillator. How you do it is just click on it, send it, tell it which amp you want it to go to. You can have as many filters as you like as well. You can have them in serial or tandem. You can send each oscillator to 1 filter, 2 filter, 3 filters, whatever you want. So we could send oscillator 2 to filter 2. Change this to a bandpass, something totally different. Yes, anyway, that is the amp section, the filter section, and the shaper section. Again, you can add in as many shapers as you like as well. Next, we will be going over LFOs, and if we've got time, mod envelopes. These are a little bit more involved. There's a lot more controls in these. You can do some crazy stuff. Yep, and then we'll start pushing into the wavetables and effect sections. But yeah, thanks for watching. Cheers.